Get started. We're starting. So welcome everyone. It is great to see you. So it's a great honor for me to welcome Julian Degen of Trier University to CASR. Dr. Degen works on ancient Mediterranean East empires, on historiography, among other things. And he is part of Kristin Joachimsen's Perseus project. And I guess that is also why he is here today with us in Oslo. So today he's going to talk about the book of Esther and Achaemenid Imperial narratives. And as all of you know, I guess, all those in the room, if you're going to say something, comment, or pose a question, please head over to the microphone here. And if you're with us digitally, you can use the chat function to pose your question there. Please, Julia.
So thank you very much, Liv, for this very kind introduction. And I also have to thank Kristin for the opportunity to be here and to teach and to present my research here at MF Oslo. So I hear so many wonderful input, and it's very important for me as an Achaemenid scholar to discuss ancient Near Eastern and classical texts in the relation to the biblical sources. The title of my talk today is The Book of Esther and Achaemenid Imperial Narratives. This talk is a kind of the reduced version of an article that I have published very recently in the Journal of Near Eastern Studies. If anyone is interested, just send me an email. You can find my email on the handout. I will be happy to share the PDF with you. The main topic now is the reign of the Achaemenid great king Xerxes I, who is believed to be one of the most aggressive and evil Achaemenid great rulers, behaving very aggressively towards religious others than his own. There are two main sources who are thought to be testimonies to his, let's say, evil and sacrilegious nature against other religions. The first source is the book of Esther. It's the first text, the first paragraph that you found on your handout. It's a short paragraph of chapter 3. I quote, the context of this passage is that Mordecai refused to prostrate himself in front of Haman and the great king. And then the text goes as follows, I quote, "Then the king's secretaries were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and an edict according to all that Haman commanded was written to the king's satraps and to the governors over all the provinces, and to the officials of all the peoples, to every province in its own script, and every people in its own language. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus, the biblical Xerxes, and sealed with the king's ring. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces, giving orders to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, children and women, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods." End of quotation. Well, if you would treat this text as a historical source, it would be the only testimony of an Achaemenid king ordering to kill a specific ethnic or religious group in the empire. That's very unique. And there are some biblical scholars who think that this order of Xerxes mentioned in the book of Esther is a real order issued by an Achaemenid king. Because we have here it said that this order has been disseminated throughout the empire, literally to every people in its own language. We find actually the same saying in the Pisidian inscription of Darius I. He wanted to his version of the usurpation to the throne be disseminated throughout the empire in languages of his subjects. That's one reason for this text being authentic, but there's another reason that speaks, so to say, for its historicity, and that's an Achaemenid royal inscription. That's the second text that you find on your handout. It's XDH, it's a so-called Diver inscription of Xerxes I, the son of Darius the second Achaemenid king. It has been found in Persepolis, It's written in Old Persian language. I quote. And among those countries, peoples, the satrapies of the empire that have been in turmoil, there were some where formerly the divers had been worshipped. Forwards by the favor of our master, I destroyed the places of the divers, and I gave orders that divers shall not be worshipped any longer. Wherever formerly the divers have been worshipped, there I worship our master at the proper time with the proper ceremony. End of quote. As you see, this text may confirm the harsh policy of Xerxes I towards religions other than his own. And his own religion is believed to be Zoroastrian because he refers to our master, who we know as the supreme deity in the Zoroastrian pantheon. So, following, for example, specialists in biblical studies like Robert J. Lippmann, this statement found in the book of Esther should be seen in relation with the Diver inscription, and it is a testimony to the harsh policy taken by the Achaemenid kings towards the Jewish communities and against Greeks and Babylonians, because in the history of Herodotus it's mentioned that Xerxes has destroyed some sanctuaries in Greece and in Asia Minor, and Herodotus also states that Xerxes destroyed Babylonian temples. So this fits perfectly to this image of Xerxes being an evil ruler destroying foreign sanctuaries. But that's a problem. All these sources derived from different cultural contexts. They cannot be put into one narrative, into one historical narrative. But this is the problem that most of the scholars do. For example, Greek temples have not been destroyed, but Xerxes has taken away their idols and brought them back on the next day. It's called god napping. It's an old ancient Near Eastern tradition. In Babylon, no sanctuary has been destroyed. We have abundant archival evidence, documentary evidence coming from archives about what was going on during the reign of Xerxes I in Babylon. We know that some elites have been punished for supporting local uprisings against Achaemenid domination, but there is no sign that temples have been destroyed by the hands of the Persians. So this only makes sense if we read ancient Eastern sources through the lens of Greek texts. And that's the main thing. And with this Canva inscription seems to confirm this view created by Herodotus and other Greek historians. But the main problem is no one has ever tried to understand the Diver inscription, its original meaning, because it's written in Old Persian and in Elamite and in Babylonian. But everyone is focused on the Old Persian version of this inscription. That's a problem because Old Persian is very poorly attested. We only have 76 Old Persian inscriptions of the Achaemenid period, and we have to reconstruct the Old Persian language through very sources of much later dates. For example, the Vestian texts in Sanskrit, because it's an Indo-Germanic language. So it's like using modern Greek to reconstruct ancient Greek, and a lot of the original sense thereby is lost. So it's very interesting to have a look on to contextualize the Diver inscription in its Achaemenid context. And if you have a look on the 4th and 5th text on your handout, that's the so-called Pisudun inscription of Darius I. And considering this inscription, all Persian, gives a sense what Xerxes has attempted to state in his Darius inscription. Here, Darius I says that he defeated the Elamites and the Sakas. Those were disloyal, those were rebels, and they did not worship Ahura Mazda. But he, Darius, worshipped Ahura Mazda, and by the favor of Ahura Mazda, that's this divine correlation in this text, so he treated them as rebels and destroyed them. And that's very interesting. Darius uses Ahura as kind of patron of the empire, a symbol of the empire, in order to legitimate to defeat the Elamites and the Sakas, who became rebels. And in the next text is also another paragraph of the Isidore inscription. Here, Darius claims that the kingdom has been taken away from his family. Then he's trying to legitimize himself. And there he says that temples have been destroyed, and those are temples where his arch enemy Gamata, also a Persian, said to have destroyed. That's very important to remind, because Darius states that he restored these temples, and he there re-established a cult of Ahura Mazda, because he did this in favor of Ahura Mazda. So as we see, Ahura Mazda is a patron of the Persian Empire. Everyone who does not obey Ahura Mazda is a rebel in the eyes of the great king and has to be defeated. He is an enemy of the empire, not an enemy of the god. So it seems that this proclamation has nothing to do with religion or monotheism. It has something to do with the imperial policy. And this idea can be confirmed by a close look on the Babylonian inscription of the Diva inscription. That's very interesting, because we have a lot of Babylonian sources in order that allow us to contextualize the Babylonian version of the Diva inscription. And now I quote the translation of the Babylonian version of the Diva inscription before I continue to contextualize it. I quote, "And among these lands, there's a place where previously they performed religious rites for the evil ones." In Old Persian, the Diva. We do not understand the term Diva in Old Persian. Afterwards, for the favor of our Mazda, tore down the house of those evil ones, and down they are called Lemnuti. That's very interesting, because that's rebels in Assyrian and Babylonian royal inscriptions. And Xerxes continues to state, "And I made a prohibition. Thus, you must not perform religious rites, Isinu, for the evil ones." Well, use a better translation for the rebels. And there were previously these religious rites have been performed for the rebels. There he re-established a cult for Al-Mazda. So as we now see, this text is about defeating rebels, and re-establishing a cult for Al-Mazda does not mean to prove an Achaemenid dogma right. It does not mean to convert people. It's just to mean to restore imperial power and order that in the Achaemenid mind is legitimized by Ahura Mazda. And to prove this, that this is nothing new in the ancient Near East, I want you to have a look at the last text on your handout. That's a description of Ashurbanipal. It's a new Assyrian king. And this is about a successful defeat of a rebel, his brother. And when he defeated his rebel, he said, that's very important, that the description of his brother as a rebel. He says about him that his brother has plotted evil ways to deprive him, Ashurbanipal, out of the cult centers, the dwelling places of the great gods, whose sanctuary I have renovated and decored with gold and silver, and in whose midst I constantly established appropriate procedures. That's the Babylonian term Isuno. And as soon as Ashurbanipal has brought these revolts to an end, he abandoned the cults made on behalf of his brother and re-established new cults made on his behalf. And this might be, in my eyes, the context of the Diva inscription. There, Xerxes is saying, I defeated rebels, I brought an end to the procedures and ceremonies made on the behalf of the rebels, and restored a new cult on my behalf. And only a cult bestowed on the behalf of a king makes this king a legitimate king in the eyes of the people living in the Near East. And this idea can be found throughout the whole history of the ancient Near East, but there's only one specific thing that makes this inscription so peculiar. That's the idea of monotheism, but this has something to do with this new realism created by the Achaemenid great kings, because there's only truth and lie in the world. There's only Ahura Mazda, and there are only rebels. There's only chaos and order brought by Ahura Mazda, and there's only one power in the great world, one political power. That's the great king. That's the main difference to all the others in ancient Near Eastern inscriptions. There's only one political power in the world of the Achaemenid king who dominates the whole world. And this is the creation of a new realism. And this might be the only, for me, the only explanation to understand the Diver inscription as an ideological program. This has nothing to do with religion and has nothing to do with historiography. It's just a political statement. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, we open the floor for questions and comments.